Hello everyone. We are so excited to share with you a few surprises from Finca Botanica, Young Living's farm in Ecuador. I'm Jacob Young.
And I'm Chris Packer, Senior Director of Global Farm Labs and New Botanicals.
Chris has one of the coolest jobs at Young Living, which is to help identify new essential oils to add to Young Living's already impressive portfolio of products. First, I want to take a minute or two and tell you a little about how Chris got started with Young Living. In 2009, my dad asked Chris if he'd like to go to Ecuador and work on the farm. Chris was up to the challenge and quickly learned how to farm and distill aromatic plants, and worked his way up to the farm manager of Finca Botanica. I picked this photo to show all of you because I think it is funny that the two of them are in the middle of a field taking notes together, and, as you can all see, both Chris and my dad are left-handed. My dad also took Chris into the Amazon jungle to look for new exotic aromatic plants. When my dad decided to install a laboratory at the farm in Ecuador, Chris immediately took an interest in understanding how to analyze and study the chemical profile of essential oils. So my dad took Chris to France to learn how to operate lab instruments from the same person who taught him, Dr. Casabianca. Not long after that, Dr. Casabianca went to the Ecuador Farm Lab to further train Chris and help calibrate the new instruments. So now Chris sets up and oversees the analytical laboratories at our corporate farms and helps find new aromatic plants that may yield useful essential oils. In fact, one of the first projects that Chris worked on back in 2009 when he first moved to Ecuador involved new botanicals. Here's a photo of Chris and Mark working on securing a wild-crafted supply of eucalyptus blue. Okay, back to why we are here today, which is to tell you about two new oils that Chris and his team have worked really hard to bring to you.
I'm really excited to share you the first of the two oils. It was a lot of fun for our team to research and discover the oil Picotea.
Picotea sounds a lot like ocotea, which is another oil from Ecuador. Are the two related?
That's right, they are closely related. They are both ocoteas.
And with them being both ocoteas, what does that mean?
They share the same family, however, the aroma is completely different.
Wow, that's really interesting. And when did you start researching this botanical?
In 2018, I started working with a local botanist in the Amazon jungle. We had a project to discover and distill all of the ocoteas that we could possibly find in the Amazon jungle.
Wow. And how many species did you find?
We distilled over 25 different species.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It was a lot of work and a lot of fun. In order to harvest these ocoteas, they're such tall trees that you have to scale the trees and harvest the branches and limbs, bring them back and distill them at the farm.
Wow. So you distilled the leaves of over 25 species of ocotea. And why did you choose Picotea?
Picotea was one of the few oils one of the few plants that actually bared a significant amount of oils and had the most attractive and rich aroma.
Okay, and when you analyzed the oil, did you find anything?
The oil of the Picotea is similar to ocotea, but it's richer and has a lot more notes.
Very cool. And did you know what the indigenous people used the Picotea tree for?
So any new thing that we discover, we always go and talk to the local tribes and medicine men. One of the shamans that we met in the Shuar community told us that it was used to give strength and protection against spiritual protection.
So after you identified this particular species of ocotea, what were the next steps to make it an oil that we can offer to all of our customers?
After we did the small batch distillation, which only takes about 2 kilos of raw material, then we were able to go out into the jungle and confirm that there was enough raw material to sustainably harvest and do a large distillation at the farm.
And how did the distillation go?
Jacob, it was amazing. When we distilled this for the first time, the rich aroma of the jungle and cinnamon filled the entire farm.
So tell me a little bit more about this aroma. It sounds very interesting.
The aroma is slightly spicy and has some similarities to ocotea. However, it's smoother and has more notes, and you really see this in the chemistry.
I love it. And you mentioned earlier about harvesting the plant materials sustainably. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
One of the things that I really love about both Ocotea and Picotea and what Young Living has done for the Ecuadorian jungle and the community is the fact that in order to harvest the trees, you don't cut down the tree. We only prune the top of the canopy, and it takes 6 months, less than 6 months for that to regrow. So we are actually protecting the forest because we're creating sustainable work for the local community, rather than them coming in and clear cutting the forest for lumber or for cattle industry. They're actually taking care of these trees.
Wow, that's amazing. And it sounds like you have a very rewarding job.
I do. I have a very rewarding job. And I'd like to mention that on these expeditions is where I actually met my wife.
Wow, that's a great story. So you found love while looking for essential oils for Young Living. That's such a great combination.
She is an amazing research partner with me. Her background is an environmental lawyer, and she loves getting dirty, running through the jungles, being out there for days out of hand. And she actually likes the bugs.
Oh my. You're definitely lucky to have a partner to discover new aromatic plants with. All right, let's talk about the second new essential oil.
The second essential oil is called Incan Melissa.
Okay, that's an interesting name, and it also sounds like it may have some similarities to another Young Living oil.
The aroma and the chemistry is almost identical to French Melissa.
Wow. How'd you discover the plant?
In 2018, our agronomist, Orlando Pacheco, discovered this plant growing in an herbalist in the coastal mountain range.
Okay, and what caused you to find an interest in this plant?
When Orlando brought the plant to me on the farm, he was so excited, and I was overjoyed when I smelt it because it reminded me so much of Melissa.
Okay, and with it smelling like Melissa, does it also look like Melissa?
They are not related, so you would not mistaken them. They look completely different.
So did you distill a small batch?
The day that Orlando brought that back, we only had 2 kilos of raw material, barely enough to squeeze out a couple drops.
So with the few drops that you collected, what were you able to learn from that?
We were able to get enough to run it through the GC, and as I analyzed it, it confirmed my suspicions that in fact it shared almost identical chemistry to Melissa.
That's great. And what did you do next?
One thing I do want to mention about that I forgot is the fact that it yields more than double of Melissa.
Wow.
So with all of that, considering all of that, and the limited amount of raw material that we could source from the greenhouse, we had to cultivate from about 10 plants, taking clippings, seeds, and do about 5 different generations before we were able to get 1 hectarea, 10 hectareas. It took us about 2.5 years to get to where we could actually do large production.
Wow, I love it. And so with this name, the Incan Melissa name, why did you decide to incorporate Incan into the name?
So part of the procedure, every time that we discover a new plant, I will take a plant pressing, press a specimen, and then I send it off to a botanist to do identification. That way, we can see if there's any research that's been done on it before, if it's ever been identified, and then I will look at ethnobotanical research.
Okay, and that's a big word. What does ethnobotanical mean?
Ethnobotanical is one of my favorite words and one of my favorite things to study. It actually means the study of the indigenous people and plants.
Wow, I really like the big word for that name. And so why did you include Incan in the name itself?
Looking into the ethnobotanical research, we were able to determine that the indigenous people of Ecuador had been using it dating back to the Incan Empire.
I love it. The way that you tie the name in with the people, just amazing how you're able to do that. And so you also mentioned that with your very first test distillation of Incan Melissa in 2018, that it yielded so much with just those few drops. So how did you go from that to being able to launch this product in just a few years?
It was a very long process, but thanks to everyone's hard work at the farm, we were able to scale up our operation and able to release it to everyone this year.
And with this being such a huge operation and having to scale up, were there any challenges that you ran into with growing and expanding the Incan Melissa?
Jacob, anytime that you're having a new plant that you've never grown before, and that's something so exciting and something that Gary loved doing, you're learning as you're going along. You don't know how much water it needs, what soil it needs, the correct fertilization. We had to learn as we were going on and learn as we were scaling up. So that was one of the main challenges.
It's nice to see your hard work develop into something that other people can enjoy. Thank you for sharing how you and the rest of the farm team in Ecuador brought Picotea and Incan Melissa to Young Living.
Wait, we're not done. We will be including these 2 new oils with 2 classic Ecuadorian oils.
Do they happen to be some of my favorite oils?
They're some of my favorites. Palo Santo and Ecuadorian Ylang Ylang.
And Palo Santo has such a cool story. Chris, can you tell everyone about the tree and why it has the name Palo Santo?
I would love to. The name Palo Santo translates to holy wood or priestwood, and it's given this name because it has a vast amount of historical usages.
Yes. And I've heard my dad talk about the unique process for harvesting and distilling this oil. Can you talk a bit about that?
The story of Palo Santo is a beautiful one. In order to harvest and distill the tree has to live a long life and die a natural death. Only then can you distill the wood.
And is there a certain amount of time that you have to wait?
I'm glad you asked that. We have done countless research on this. And all our findings show that after 3 to 5 years is the best time that you get the highest quality of essential oils.
Wow. And waiting the 3 to 5 years must require a lot of patience and a lot of planning behind it, does it not?
Absolutely. And this is something that your father knew, the implications of this. And at the farm in Ecuador, he was able, when he was clearing the land, he found an area where the Palo Santo naturally grew and designated it as the Palo Santo forest. From that time, when we were going through and clearing all of the fields, we would take the Palo Santo tree from the field and transplant the little baby trees up there. And then after that, with many members, we planted another 5,000 trees to protect and conserve the Palo Santo.
I love that.
For years to come.
I love that story. And I also remember hearing that Palo Santo may be related to frankincense. Is that true?
Palo Santo is the cousin of frankincense.
I love it. Very cool. I remember my dad referenced Palo Santo as the frankincense of Ecuador, and it also happened to be the first tree that my dad distilled in Ecuador.
Yes, it's also referred to the frankincense of South America, Ecuador, and was very important to the native people.
Yes. Okay, last but not least, can you share with us a bit about Ecuadorian Ylang Ylang?
Ecuadorian Ylang Ylang, the queen of the farm and the flowers.
Wow. And how many Ylang Ylang trees are growing on the Finca Botanica farm?
We have approximately 70,000 trees on the finca.
That's a lot of trees. And a big shout out to the hundreds, possibly thousands of Young Living brand partners who have helped plant so many of the Ylang Ylang trees. I've also helped harvest the flowers, and it is quite labor intensive.
Our Ylang Ylang flowers are harvested in the early morning by the hands of the women of Chongong. Each and every picker is responsible for their own area.
Wow. And the Ylang Ylang flower has so many names throughout the world. I've heard it referred to in Spanish as Reina de las Flores, which translates to Queen of the Flowers.
It's also known as Sígueme, Sígueme, which translates to follow me, follow me. Because if anyone wears this oil, it's so intoxicating that you want to follow that aroma anywhere.
Oh my. And so what makes Ecuadorian Ylang Ylang so unique and special?
Ylang Ylang is grown in many parts of the tropics. One of the things that separates it from other Ecuadorian Ylang Ylang from those other parts of the tropics is the unique soil and climate, and the chemistry is very different due to the environmental differences.
My dad always told me that Ecuadorian Ylang Ylang was one of his personal favorites. Chris, I've heard that you and the team have learned a lot after distilling Ylang Ylang for so many years. Can you touch upon that?
Throughout these years, Gary and the team and I have worked very hard on improving our efficiency. We're now able to get the same high-quality essential oils using less raw material.
That's amazing. So you've achieved the same exceptional quality while reducing your environmental impact. It sounds like things at the Finca are going smoothly.
It's a balance of beauty and efficiency.
I love it. The Finca Botanica farm collection includes some of the most iconic essential oils distilled at the Ecuador farm. This collection includes a booklet that has a recipe for adding these 4 blends together. We are calling it Ecuadorian Sunset. Just add 4 drops of Ecuadorian ylang-ylang with 2 drops of Palo Santo and 1 drop each of Incan Melissa and Picotea.
These oils work amazingly together.
The Finca Botanica collection is available now and is $145 wholesale in the US. We are also offering the collection bundled with a Haven diffuser at a 10% discount.
I'm thrilled to be part of making this collection happen. Gary was my mentor, and he instilled in me the importance and the passion of discovering new aromatic plants and bringing those oils to the world.
Great work, Chris. Thanks for helping make this happen.
It's been a lot of fun. And I hope to see you all very soon in Ecuador at the Finca Botanico farm.